Good evening, traders. This is Christian Farmer, Starbucks Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, December 3rd. Hope everybody had a nice trading day today. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. As you can see, a lot of green on your screen today. Breadth was very good. We were looking at plus 70%. NYSE up volumes today. That's a strong day. And even with this negative headline that we heard on Microsoft, which I'm going to get to in a minute, things really were pretty strong. And it seemed like a buyable dip, which I'll go over that in just a second. But that wasn't the story for today, other than headlines and what financial media is going to talk about, right? They're going to talk about that story. But the story was the small caps today. They were up 1.8%. And look at the micro caps today, right? So let me just move the screen so that you could see this here. But up 3% for the day. That's a huge move by the micro caps. And if you break it down, look at what outperformed today. Energy, metals and mining, a lot of the commodity plays today. Copper was up today. Gold was up originally, but gave that back. But nat gas was a big mover today. Those stocks those charts are super strong that are going on in commodities. Also, something else woke up today, biotech, which was a bit extended. It was something that I reviewed for members over the weekend, that biotech has been one of the strongest sectors over the last month, or groups over the last month, but it was a bit extended and needed to kind of pull back a little bit to kind of fill in a little bit of that overbought level. So I like that a lot. Also, banks and builders up. So we're going to go through all that. I am going to start with the whole AI stuff because I just think it's interesting. So let me just bring up a couple charts here, and then we will. So I'll start with Microsoft, then I'll review the indices. And then we'll talk about some of the really good looking charts and single stock setups right now in this market. So let me replace the screen here, and we will go to the charts of Microsoft. So this whole thing, right? So this whole thing got a lot of noise today about the software being not as strong, and this company called The Information, which puts out these big headlines. If you've been familiar with this company, The Information, that's who the source of this stuff is. And I've seen this a couple times from them. I don't know who they are, but they tend to really move the market because they always come out with something that's kind of unusual. But in any event, they mentioned something that they're forecasting weaker sales, right, or not enough demand in some of their like software products. Now the stock went down and was down 2.5% today, and it kind of dragged. That was a big headline that hit, and the market sold off on that. But I will tell you this. Don't you feel like you already know that? And because later, by the way, what happened, and 20 people tell me this on Twitter, and I tweeted out as soon as I heard that Microsoft came out and said that they deny that story. And but still, like, people are angry, and they didn't see that I retweeted that out. But didn't the market already tell you this, that something is going on? Now, I don't know if this story from The Information is true, but we went over this. We did a webinar on Monday night, and I sent that out to members, and we specifically went over and we talked about how the Microsoft chart does not look very good, even though it kind of came back a little bit. But it's not to say that something won't change in the future. So please don't disregard what I'm saying here. I'm looking at kind of more of the short term. Long term, like, they could come out with some new feature, kind of like what happened with Google. A few months ago, Google was in the doghouse because their AI product was not up to snuff. They come out and they enhance that, and now Google's a leader in this group. But so it's not to say, like, Microsoft could definitely change things, but as of now, that the stock has not been acting very well. It's down 7%. So it's almost like, when I saw that headline, I was like, okay, let's see what the knee-jerk reaction is on Microsoft. But I'm like, something is already going on in Microsoft that is not particularly good, right? Sometimes people think that they need to see the news, right? But sometimes the price action already tells you what's going on, and something is very weak like that's going on in this. It's probably because OpenAI, I suspected that OpenAI is not executing as well as its competition is. But it could be a number of things. But regardless, the price is telling you something. This is underneath the 50-day moving average. Now, again, it's not total game over for Microsoft. It's above the 200-day moving average right now, but it's below the 20. It's below the 50-day moving average. And if you're somewhat of a technician, or if you understand how to use charts, the price action is telling you this. And and why I'm starting with Microsoft is because some folks think that the charts don't tell them anything. You have to understand that many moves will happen before you know what the story is, before the news actually comes out, right? Because there's always somebody who does know, right? And whether that's, it's usually, but you have to be inside the company to be knowing what's going on. You have to be, in the executive, area of the market to know what's going on. But people that always gets out, and usually the stock moves in advance of something good going on or something bad going on. To me, there's something that's not right with going on with Microsoft. And again, it could be the story that we heard today. It could be something that I already mentioned, or it could be something other. But here's Google, which finished up 1.2% today and has been acting like a rock star. And again, it's not to say things can't change. Something changed in here, right? They redid their AI model, and it's winning it's winning the space right now, right? But again, these things don't take it for the wrong thing. Eventually, so what's usually the signal that's going to tell you that something is going to change in Google? It's probably if it breaks the 20-day moving average, right? And that's all it is, guys. And then we can learn about the story afterwards, right? And it's the same thing like in Nvidia has not been acting well since it had its earnings report. Right? Probably tells me that there's other competition out there. Again, do I think that the story's over for Nvidia and yada yada yada? No, I don't. I don't think the story's over, but I know in the short term the stock's not acting very well. What about Oracle? Right? And again, simple technical analysis. Right? You break the 50-day moving average, which was up here. Right? I believe that's up here. That's the 20. Where is the 50? 50 is in here someplace. Oh, the 50 is here, right? Price breaks the 50-day moving average, right? That's it, right? When something's been in an uptrend and honoring that 50-day moving average, it breaks. You don't need to know about how that the credit is getting more expensive, and that is good enough to know what's going on. All right, so let's talk about again. These things will get so much attention, and there is such a lack of teaching about how to use technical analysis. People think that the news can definitely change a chart. There's no doubt about it. But there's so many times that the stock will break down before you truly know what's going on in the name. And that's why that's how you're supposed to use charts to say, okay, with something that was really strong, the price action is going to tell you when something changes. And a lot of times it's before you get the news story. And if you're disciplined like that, that's what you're doing, right? But this is chart stuff 101. But I like to break it down like this because I think it gets lost sometimes. It gets lost in the sauce. All right, so let's go back here and now that I wanted to. Oh, I said I would go next over the indices. Sometimes I lose track. We all go on rants and we kind of forget where we're going. But hey, SPY is breaking above the value area for the month. Again, I have a whole bunch of thoughts about what I think could happen, but I'm going to, follow price action and breadth. I mentioned the UpVolume in New York Stock Exchange was 70% today, so there was some buying today. There was some buying out there. So really, the level that I'm watching here is 680.66. If you want to bring it a little bit closer, keep an eye on the even more short term. Watch this top of the value area for the week. That's 683.66. And if we continue to be on, to go above here, I'm bullish. If we break back into this, then I'm not going to be as bullish, because I think it's really tough to kind of understand what's going on right now. We know that Fed fund futures are pricing in that they're going to cut interest rates a week from now, right? We get the Fed meeting a week from now, next Wednesday. So the pricing mechanism, Fed Fund futures, went from, remember, 2 weeks ago it was 30% chance that they were going to cut interest rates, and the markets dipped on that, and now we're back to like 98%. Now, I think the question will be is what the stance is going to be going forward. Are they going to cut interest rates? Meaning, are they going to cut interest rates again at the end of January, which I think is the next Fed meeting? So that's guidance is going to be crucial for the market in the short term. All right, let's go to the Qs. By the way, this is what the Qs did today. They basically just came right back to where they were. Full round trip today, right? Selling off on that headline and realizing that, anyway, so I'll move on from that because I got a lot of things to go over here. But same thing with the Qs. Watch the top of the value area, and that's 619.94. IWM, as I mentioned, was the superstar today. Let's see what it can do here. 1 hour chart. We did come out and take out that upside VPOC. So there's been some targets that have been taken out here. That's very nice. So would I be a seller into this? Well, I certainly wouldn't be a buyer into this. I know that we've got some resistance. I would watch to see if we could stay above 248.76. I also think that there's something else going on here for the small caps to get going. I think that the market is now pricing in Mr. Hassett as being the next Fed chair that's going to be coming. In May is when we get, we're going to get the announcement very soon, but you can begin to kind of think about what that means for the market. And I think if you look at what's going on in IWM and IWC, which I think is very much fixated on whether the Fed is dovish or hawkish, I think that the market is pricing in Hassett at this point, which is Polymarket last I checked was around 80% chance, right? So the market is looking ahead. Hence, right, look at what's going on, and I'll give you an example of why I think that. Look at what TLT did today, right? It's up 30 basis points. So really, interest rates haven't really done. If you look, we're looking at the long end of the curve. It's going to be somewhat different when we look at IEF, which is 7 to 10 years. But mortgage rates are not going down, significantly at this point. That would be a catalyst for home builders. Another catalyst for home builders is what's going on in the future. And I think with Hassett getting priced in, look at what ITB did today, right? So I think ITB is looking ahead, right? This is the ETF with the most amount of home builders in it. Huge day, very nice day today, up 2.1% and getting above this pivot here. And I think that the market is recognizing that not recognizing, but pricing in a higher probability that someone super dovish is going to be coming in and cutting rates sometime next year. And again, the market doesn't just wait for that and stand still. It begins to make adjustments once probabilities. Remember, we function on probabilities, right, in the market. So that was a pretty good story today. Also, the banks were very good today. So KBE, right? And I also think that's kind of the same reason. We did take out a VPOC up here, but take a look at what Goldman did today. I think that's a new closing high for Goldman, right? So it's pretty bullish looking. Morgan Stanley, also look at that chart. Right? I'm long this in the TTG trend portfolio, so very nice move there. And I mean that's a pretty good sign for the market. Other things, I kind of jinxed Apple earlier. I sent out a tweet earlier saying, "Hey, Apple, this little company, they made 52-week, they made a new all-time high, and probably as soon as I tweeted that, it began to sell off a little bit. So it finished down on the day, but still above the 5-day moving average. Also, Walmart. This was a name that I was long last week. Bad trading decision. I cut this position on Friday of last week, and since then it's exploded higher. One of those things where I was holding Walmart for a long time in here and it did nothing, and I got really impatient with it. I waited till it had earnings. I didn't understand why it sold off on earnings, and I bought it in here. But that's a heck of a move in Walmart, and it's kind of just going along with what we're seeing in retail. Right, we're seeing a lot of strong looking retail charts. Some, not all, are in like the discount brokers, discount retailers. Things like Walmart. Next, I wanted to go over the biotech chart. Right, that's a really nice move into, back in here. As I mentioned in our weekend video, I said, hey, biotech has been acting great, but it got a little bit ahead of itself. Last 2 days, a lot of volume, by the way, yesterday. Um, some selling closed close to the lows of the days, and look at it snap back here, up 2.8%. And if you go through some of these charts, I think you got some opportunities here. Look at Lilly. That's definitely a name that I'll be watching tomorrow. It's been one of the strongest names over the last month. Huge breakout. And now you got your test back into the 20-day moving average, right? We like dips and uptrends, yeah? Right. Well, then that's a pretty darn good one. MDGL is another one that I'm watching in this space. GRAL was a name that was super hot about 2 weeks ago. Also, that's a nice looking candle there for GRAL. Right. Again, more, if you're looking for something more higher beta, that's a nice pullback into didn't even get into the 20-day moving average, and you got a nice bullish engulfing here for GRAL. All right, let's talk about another star of the day, copper. So copper futures, again, futures are going to look a little bit different than if you look at like a forward for futures, but regardless, this is up 2.8%, right? And copper's really been moving, pretty decently. So, SCC, the two names that I generally trade are SCCO, FCX. I got long last week. I did take this off, right? Because I had mentioned in the beginning of my trade that the VPOC would be my target. I got long in here in FCX. And again, not the biggest, winner in the world, but hey, this is what's working really nicely right now. XME took out an upside VPOC today. That was up 3.2% today. Nat gas stocks look great today. With the move in not copper, NG should be here, but look at the move here, right? And really what I've been looking at is this weekly chart in copper, and I see this VPOC up here. Now that's another 29% up here. But I guess it's going to depend a bit on the weather and whether or not we're going to get a really cold winter. But I could tell you where I am right now. It's pretty darn cold, and just got about a half a foot of snow. So 6.475, and energy trades look look pretty good. I got long some of this AR today and Terra Resources. Again, it just looked like it didn't pull back that much the last couple days. It took out this VPOC, and let's even get up here, 38.86. This is another name that I've been holding for about, I don't know, it feels like forever. It's probably been about 3 weeks since I've been holding this SLB, and my target is not even that far away. It's to the bottom of the value area for the year, but had a nice move today. I've also been long FANG for a couple weeks. Not the tech stocks, but the energy name. Again, all I'm looking for is a move to the bottom of the value, some retracement, 166.50. But nice move there. All right, so I will leave it there, guys. But all in all, like I said, very good looking breadth today. I like that other things are going up besides just the AI trade. Again, I've got a couple plays on like Google and Apple, but mainly I'm liking what I'm seeing in some of the other areas of the market. And again, I think that's much healthier, to see that going on. People are too hooked on what's going on in the AI space. Again, I think some things can kind of come back. I'm watching some of the uranium names. I'm watching this LEU a bit, but ultimately, I think that there's going to be, and there has been, some better plays over the last month